The way 4-stars are designed at their core and fundamentals is completely different to how they were designed all those years ago. It almost feels like there's been a 180 shift completely in the way 4-stars are designed with their kit. And this video's purpose is to serve and educate on why 4-stars are designed like this and what happened from the very start of the game which caused this dramatic shift. And why I think 4-stars were doomed from the very start. To understand the way things are now, you must look into the past and history. And to understand the issue with the 4-stars now, we need to take a long look into the past. In version 1.0, these were the following 4-stars that were released. Since I can't talk about all of them in one video, I'm going to single out Lisa, Bennett. Now when you first look at this selection, you may notice that one character looks slightly out of place, and you're wondering to yourself, why did I choose Lisa? For one, I felt it would be really unfair to only choose the big three, and I really wanted to add a character that no doubtfully fell off. Since Lisa is an electro unit, her potential was nowhere near as high as it was during 3.0. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. Her core kit entails just off-field electro application, which in 1.0 was diabolically useless. The only reactions you have with electro, superconductor, electro charge and overloaded. All three of these reactions were extremely mid at the time, and they literally had no purpose being in the game. And I'll talk about how Genshin fixed those reactions, but more on that later. Let's move on to a 4-star that's actually still relevant today. The big man himself, Bennett. No introductions needed here. His kit revolves around providing a massive attack buff to literally anyone on your party. Alongside this, extremely impressive healing. Genshin Impact added one of the most versatile and best units in the entire game as a 4-star character in the first update ever. And this changed how good 4-star units can be, genuinely forever. Because if you want people to want to pull for a character, you're gonna have to make them better than the alternative. And with Bennett's power level, that will literally be game breaking. And there was no sloppier way than Hoyoverse could have went about this than the way they have. And now the purpose that 4-stars bring will be changed forever. In Genshin Impact, there were a large amount of elemental reactions and even elements themselves that were kind of considered useless for a really long time, with currently absolutely no fix for electro charge. But let's first talk about the problems themselves. Overloaded is a reaction between Pyro and Electro, which does a pretty decent shockwave of damage, but also sends every single enemy in the vicinity flying, which can be a run killer in mass enemy Swirl-Abyss runs. Electro Charge is a very... I hate saying Electro Charge is a really weird reaction. When both of these elements are combined, a shockwave will be sent around multiple enemies dealing electro damage. And this reaction is supposed to be useful for fighting many enemies at the exact same time, but it just doesn't work. Now let's talk about something more in tune with this segment of the video, and talk about the animal element being used in the DPS space. Now yes, as a supportive element, it's amazing, no one can deny that, but this is a very different topic of discussion. Due to its lack of offensive reactions, it has kind of grown to be an element which has kind of been in the past in terms of DPS. So Hoyoverse saw this glaring issue, and what did they do? Add a 4-star character which makes the element usable, but without the character and their C6, the element is still useless? How does that make any sense? It doesn't. It really doesn't. Essentially, the quote-unquote buff for the element is technically behind a paywall. And sure, try to argue that Farazan is free-to-play friendly, but don't deny how clunky she is at C0, or the fact her C6 is so good it makes C0 look unbearable, like 40% crit damage. But for a while, Farazan was her own special case. Not all the 4-stars were a necessity to a reaction like she was, until they got flipped on its head with the release of Chevreuse. And now instead of buffing elements, we have a 4-star character who buffs an entire reaction. Her kit revolves around her or her team proccing the overloaded reaction, in order to receive massive res shred for both Pyro and Electro. And while C0 Chevreuse can be considered a very good unit by herself, once again her C6 takes it to a whole different level. So once again, another playstyle is stuck behind a paywall. In both of these 4-stars, there's one thing that's common. While their buffs are amazing and great, they are restricted to literally 1 or 2 different teams. Alongside this, they both have broken C6s, which will make them considerably weaker without them. And of course, they have zero functionality on literally any other elemental team. So a quick summary of my points so far, for those who can't pay attention. There are some elements and reactions in Genshin Impact which do perform significantly lower than the rest of them. So instead of giving 4-stars the role of being extremely versatile, dedicated characters, A lot of them serve to make Genshin Impact reactions usable. Oh, and if you don't have these dedicated characters and they're C6, don't even bother using that reaction. You are wasting your time. It is completely useless and does 0 damage. Now I get it, we have supports like Bennett, Sucrose, all of these amazing versatile units. And I bet right now you're like, well, Melon Alex, if you're so smart, why don't you come up with your own reasons on how to fix the game? Now, if I were to tell you that I'm a professional games designer, I'd be lying straight to your beautiful face. So with this section of the video, take my opinions with a grain of salt, comment down any readjustments or suggestions you have, and if you have enjoyed this video so far, please give it a like and comment or whatever. I feel like I have just hit 1k and I'm already pushing 1.1. It is insane with the support you man are showing me recently. Anyways, let's begin. As a game developer, it is really important to make every single feature you provide for the player usable and useful. But we are already at the possible point of no return when it comes to these Genshin Impact reactions, which are kind of terrible. Which means instead of preventing, we have to find a fix. The easiest and most simple way to do is to increase the multipliers and overall give a large surplus in overall reaction damage. Overloaded is pretty useless due to the fact that it knocks away enemies quite frequently. Why not juxtapose this and make the overload like shock damage even higher? So you're dealing a high damage number at the cost of having your enemies further away from you, which means you'd have to play around the reaction in order to get the most out of it. Now let's improve electro charge. Now I did discuss this briefly earlier, so I'm not going to get into how it actually works. But the overall big complaint is that the damage produced from it is just whack. So let's change that. This is a reaction which requires multiple enemies to be in the same area at the same time. So how will I improve the damage? We give electro charged a kind of stacking system, where the more electro charges you are doing in a set area, the more damage the reaction will do, giving us a very interesting reaction to have to play around, because you have to play around having as many enemies affected by electro charge as possible, which also would give this reaction balance, as it is not effective in every single scenario, but when it is effective, it works extremely well, and is good at its own niche of only working against smaller opponents. And this reaction would be very unique and would definitely stand out way more than it does now. So now moving on to 4-star characters. Please, I beg Genshin stop using their 4-star characters as a mean of buffing useless reactions, because it's so unorganic and it's so weird, because you're now basically forced to pull for a character if you want to use that set of reaction in any team. Let me say what I think Genshin Impact should be doing now and in the future. Make 4-stars shine in areas where Bennett doesn't. Now I know that's a crazy thing to say considering Bennett shines in almost every single aspect, but in this modern age of characters there is so much that can be done. Bennett can't provide support to characters that scale off of max HP, and back when Bennett first came out that wasn't an issue, but now with characters like Farina, Nuvolette, Murilani, like top DPSs which all scale off max HP, having a free-to-play alternative for a support for a max HP user would be insane. And since I'm a game designer, I'm gonna leave the rest up to you in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was a hassle to make. I spent multiple days making this. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching this, and of course have an amazing day, and subscribe of course. Meow.